On a dark, stormy night, the street so still and quiet, the sound of the trees rattling outside banging against the windows. It was late in the night when Timothy hears a strange, faint noise coming from downstairs. He quietly gets up, walks around the house, looking to see where that noise came from. He walks slowly outside his apartment, where he suddenly finds his friend and roommate lying in a pool of his blood on the floor. Timothy runs to his friend to see what had happened, only to realize he had been stabbed multiple times and there was nothing he can do to save his friend. Timothy was in deep shock. He had not only been Jack's friend, he had been his lifelong companion, but now he could not believe that Jack had been killed by someone else. The situation was complicated, especially since the police had not been able to find any evidence of the crime other than the fingerprints that were clearly visible on the knife. But those fingerprints belonged to someone else. The FBI begins investigating the case. The first step was to examine the relationship between Timothy and Jack, and surprisingly, the two had been through some tensions in recent years. Jack had implicated Timothy in some shady business, which put pressure on them both. But did that mean that Timothy had killed his friend? It was hard to believe. The FBI discovers that Jack was working on something big before his murder, a project that involved threats that may have linked to international gangs. They also discover that Jack was working on a plan to escape involvement in these financial transactions, and Timothy seems to have been the last to know about it. At that moment, it began to suspect that Timothy knew more than he let on. Timothy reveals to the FBI dark details of his past relationship with Jack. As young men, they lived in a poor neighborhood, dreaming of a better life. And when opportunities for quick money began to appear, tensions grew between them both. Jack always had a big idea for the future, while Timothy preferred stability. But in recent days, Timothy had begun to suspect that Jack was planning to betray him, and he began to feel that his friend was putting him in situations where he had no escape. Did he really have a motive for revenge? Did he think that getting rid of Jack was the solution? The evidence began to pile up. Cameras around the crime scene had captured images of suspicious men approaching Jack's apartment on the night of the murder. Although the image was grainy, the features looked familiar. Investigations revealed that this man was working as a security guard for a company that Timothy dealt with. It turned out that the guard was involved in an illegal deal with Jack, but it was not possible to determine what role Timothy was playing in this deal. After weeks of investigation, it came to the realization that the crime was carefully planned. Eventually, it was discovered that Timothy was not the killer, but merely a tool in a larger plan. The security guard, working in the shadows, was the one who planned to kill Jack over a deal gone wrong. But the biggest surprise was the real motive behind the crime. Timothy, who had thought he was just a victim in this equation, had begun to realize that something mysterious about his friend Jack. In the end, it turned out that Jack had betrayed his friend terribly, and that he had been trading sensitive information that threatened the life of Timothy. By the time Timothy discovered this betrayal, the case had spiraled out of control. But the interesting thing is that Timothy didn't want to kill Jack. He had no ill intentions towards him. He just wanted to end this relationship, not knowing that betrayal would take everything away from him. The real killer was caught, revealing the details of the betrayal and the deals that were going on behind the scenes. But Timothy remained drowning in guilt and confusion. He had lost his only friend, and yet the shocking truth was that this friend had brought him danger from the beginning. It was known that Timothy was not the one who planned the murder, but still, the harsh truth was that Timothy was the first to lose in this deadly game. The case was closed, the killer was brought to justice, but the shadows left behind the betrayal would haunt Timothy forever.